What is your I better get the duck out of here now, because Summit is about to go down story. My friends and I were in an In-N-Out Burger in LA about 10 years ago. We saw one guy go into the restroom, closely followed by about 8 more. Suddenly there was an incredible ruckus from the bathroom, bodies slamming into the walls repeatedly. Sounds like sinks being torn off the walls, but no speaking or yelling whatsoever. Luckily, there was a security guard in the restaurant. He listened for a moment, stood up, and then jogged to his car and drove away. Needless to say, we didn't stick around to see what was going on in there, but it couldn't have been good. I was at Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado for an AS show. I left the concert early to grab something out of my car. On the way, I passed a suspicious looking individual, who moments later fired off a shotgun into the air. I sprinted all the way to my car, and it turns out this maniac was trying to kill one of the openers, Schoolboy Q. Nobody was hurt, and it barely even made the news. But a lot of people could have died if he made it inside the concert. I was driving back to school after Thanksgiving break in the rain about 8 years ago. And as I pass by an exit I see a pickup coming down the entrance ramp next to me really fast, like recklessly fast. I think to myself I better get ahead of this guy so I don't have to deal with merging with him, so I put my foot on the gas. About 10 seconds later I look in my rearview mirror to see the pickup about 100 feet behind me spinning across all 4 lanes. Then a semi which was trying to swerve to avoid him collides and smashes him straight into the barrier as it turns fully sideways across the highway. Huge bang sound as the pickup basically disintegrated. I had to pull over at the next rest stop just to calm down. Front stage for Lamb of God, I think maybe 2012ish. Suddenly people started leaving before the next song. What I didn't realize at the time was I was in the middle of a world record attempt at the largest wall of death at a festival. I haven't noped any harder than that, I don't think. I was doing a semester abroad in London. At the time there were concerns about bombings on the underground trains. During our orientation one of our guides mentioned that if you ever heard the voice on the underground PA system, ask for Inspector Sands. That was code to alert the underground staff that there was some kind of emergency without panicking the riders. One night, after class, I stopped at a restaurant. It was a McDonald's. Sue me, and the cashier forgot my order, causing my meal to be delayed. Once I got my food and finished eating, I headed to the nearest tube station to board a train home, and heard, playing on repeat, "Will Inspector Sands report to the office?" or something similar. I then noticed that a horde of police cars was converging on the area. I turned right the duck around and took a bus home. Turns out it wasn't a bombing. Someone had pushed someone else onto the tracks in front of a train. Still, I thought for half a second that a shitty McDonald's cashier might have saved me from getting blown up. This happened about 12-13 years ago. I was about 10 years old at the time. Me and my father were sitting in our car having food at a food truck. While we were sitting there, some drunk men came and parked right in front of us, blocking our way. After some time the car behind us honked so they could leave. My dad honked at the car in front of us, but they just waved at us saying they're not moving. My dad went out and told this to the car behind us. Those were 2 young men as well. They went and asked him to move. Drunk men again gave some vulgar sign and told them to duck off. This dude straight up punched the window, breaking it. Drunk men came out to fight, while my dad just picked me up and walked away from the scene. We were watching from a distance when the dude who was behind us took his gun out and shot the drunk car guy in the head point blank. Then they calmly walked back to their car, and since everyone ran away, backed up their car and went their way. I have a few more, but this was on top of my mind. I was at a house party with a few friends, where pretty much everyone from our college year was invited. One guy, who was affectionately called One Drink Davey, had probably downed about 2 pints of Stella within the hour, and I personally knew he was just a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Nevertheless, we all sat down to play Ring of Fire. That's when I saw it, his hand raised to his mouth and his eyes closed. I bolted for the door. Just as I make it past the door frame I hear a familiar splash and everyone screaming. 15 minutes later. I thought I'd go back upstairs to assess the damage. Holy shit. It's everywhere. Not just Davies. Apparently he'd started a chain with the sympathy pukers and what I was seeing was about 5 people's worth of vomit all over poor Jane's mother's creamed carpets. I've never been so glad to have been able to detect when someone's going to hurl. My uncle and stepfather were drinking late at night. Watching TV while me and a few others were just chilling in the living room. I was 15 I think. There was some shouting outside on our street. We all went out on the porch to gawk and saw our neighbor, an old man, being dragged around on the asphalt by some young guy. My uncle with his drunken bravado strutted into the middle of it and he and the young man started to push each other. Then my uncle pulled out a switchblade and the guy ran into the old man's house. That's when I decided to go back inside and watch from a window with the phone in my hand. Sure enough, the dude came back out with a butcher knife. The two of them started to struggle. My stepfather jumped in to break it up. And he ended up getting stabbed in the back by the young dude. I called the police and we ended up in the hospital all night waiting to see if my stepfather would live. He did. With a punctured lung and a lot of recovery time. I was doing charity work in high school. Just outside of a smaller mountain city in Guatemala, Jalapa. We took one afternoon off to head into the city and check out the markets and whatnot. Riding around the city in the bed of pickups trucks, about 15 of us. Extremely common there, we noticed that there wasn't much activity and a lot of the shops were closed. A local who recognized our organization started yelling when we drove by and flagged us down. So we stopped. He was in the middle of setting up a roadblock and basically told us to get the duck out of the city as fast as possible. Reason being, there was a big protest riot planned for that day. Against Canadian mining operations taking advantage of the surrounding regions. This is a small, almost third world, militaristic Central American country. Every single one of us was Canadian. We could have very easily become the perfect bargaining tool for these rebel groups. Needless to say, we got out of there as quick as humanly possible. Was leaving a bush party with a friend. To do this we had to climb a really steep hill. Not too tough because there were little trees growing out of it to grasp. About halfway up we see flashlights and someone yelled cops. My friend and I turned around and went down. I saw 2 kids rolling down the hill hitting trees. By the time we got to the bottom I decided I should get the duck out of there. But will not. Gave my friend a beer and he ran off. I laid down with my beer in some long grass and didn't move. They never found me and I heard them laughing saying things like haha. This shit is what I signed up for. Eventually I fell asleep and I woke up hours later and walked home. In 2007 I was walking towards Grand Central Station in Nig with headphones in when suddenly I see a couple of people running towards me. And away from Grand Central. At first I don't think twice about it. But then more and more people are running. Down the sidewalks. In the streets. And they look scared. I take my headphones off and ask someone what's going on. They tell me there's been an explosion at Grand Central. I look up and see the smoke. My chest tightens and I turn and I start running. I just want to get as far away as possible. Finally from a safe distance I get a cab and head uptown away from the explosion. It turned out to be a steam pipe explosion. The fears from 9/11 were still running high at this time and everyone had automatically assumed the worst. Luckily it wasn't that bad, although I think one person may have died during the event. But it was scary to be there. Went home from college the summer before my senior year. Met an old crush of mine and she invited me to a party. I walked to the address and it was this horrible, broken down house in a bad part of town. Went inside and recognized most of the people there as old co-students from high school. Had a good time drinking and smoking with them. I was pretty straight-laced in high school. I couldn't find my crush. So I went exploring the house. Found her a few other people shooting up heroin in one of the rooms. I'm not a fan of being around intravenous drugs, so I immediately left. I was only one house away before 3 cop cars started coming toward the house. I casually sat down on the other house's stoop and lit a cigarette. Watched people in the party get arrested until the cops were all looking away. Walked away into the night. Edit, heroin. The drug. Not heroin. The female protagonist. After the bars one night we're at someone's house that I know through a friend of a friend. It's a pretty big after party. Everyone is playing drinking games, some folks are ripping a bong. And then I notice a baby in a car seat on the kitchen table. Still awake at like 3 AM and just being ignored. We peaced out after I saw that. Called the cops on the way home for a noise complaint so at least someone would do something about that damn baby. If anyone is curious, a lot of these stories involve what we call in the military a change in the baseline. Basically, if something is the same way every day and one day it's not at all. For example, an empty marketplace which is normally packed. Run. Run fast. Something bad is about to happen. My mom and sister were about to go eat at Twin Peaks and Waco, but they were afraid because there were dozens of bikers and a police van. So they just went home to eat sandwiches. Our house is about 7 minutes from the restaurant and shots were fired before they got home. I was spending 4 weeks in Italy as part of a high school program. Late into the night after partying and little we're in this park, it's summer in Italy and everyone's out and about. There was a festival going on at the time. Some guys I'm with start playing soccer. And soon a group of 5 or so Italian guys come talk to us. The girls on the sidelines. And we're talking with them about our trip. Things get undesirable quickly. First, the guys ask our age. We were high school students at the time. Juniors and seniors. So they said if you're that young. We're that young. Then one of them gets on the phone. I was the only one in my group who could understand the language. And while I wasn't too fluent, I could understand young girls in the park. Turn left and right. Very beautiful. Nice asses. So I look at my friends and translate this to them as we see 10 or so more Italian guys approaching us. We book it to the hotel. In 1996 my ex and I were hanging out on Mifflin Street in Madison. We went to Madison every so often to just hang out. Visit the shops. etc. Had no idea it was Mifflin Street block party day until we got there. But it was cool. Tons of people out. And then more people. And more people. We got out when we saw that one of the pillars where people hang banned flyers. etc. had been lit on fire. Bonfires in the street. People throwing bottles and rocks at the firefighters who tried to put them out. A bunch of police and fire injuries that year. I was at a senior year high school bush party many years ago. A friend had supplied a keg and things were going well. Probably well over 150 people there. At some point in the night, some kids drove up in their dad's brand new Dodge Ram, got out and were trying to start some shit. As they were getting back in the truck, a beer bottle hits the windshield and cracks it. The kids start getting back out of the truck and are instantly ripped out by an angry mob. One of the kids managed to get out of the truck and had a big, heavy chain and started swinging it at people. He got taken out real quick by a beer bottle. Then someone picked up the chain and started whipping the truck. Everything smashable was smashed. This was some Lord of the Flies shit. As I was starting to leave, realizing that cops were certainly going to show up, someone jumps into the truck, drives it right into a giant bonfire, then hops out. I left a little faster after that. This was some insane shit for a bunch of 17-18-year-olds. We were vacationing and kayaking in Colorado and were driving out of Aspen heading back towards the Arkansas River area. The path that goes between the two is very narrow and winding, and there are multiple signs stating the maximum trailer length. Something like 24 feet or so. Not far out of Aspen. We start up a long straight and steep hill when I noticed a loaded 18-wheeler with a 50-foot trailer careening down the hill towards us. The brakes were smoking and he was hauling ass. I knew there was not enough room for the both of us because on the left side was the rock-walled mountain. And on the right was a guardrail and a huge drop-off of several hundred feet. We were on the right side and I quickly looked around and found this tiny spot I could stop and back into. But I was driving a big F250 and pulling a small trailer with boats and gear. That little spot was our only hope. So I slammed on the brakes, jammed it into reverse and hauled us backwards and somehow didn't jackknife or run into anything. Just as the truck came down the road I thought it was going to hit us and knock us off the guardrail. But somehow he managed to just miss us. The air shaking the truck while we were right next to that cliff was terrifying. Good thing I can back the sheet out of a trailer. Edit. Words. It's not mine, but my aunt is very spiritual kinda lady. And if she has a bad feeling she won't do it. She is from Peru and had been training for weeks to run the Boston Marathon. The day before the race she swears she felt like something tugging her body away and that something was not right about the event and left to go visit family instead. The next day the marathon bombing happened. When I was a kid, I was trick-or-treating with 3 of my friends. One friend and I looked back and saw that these notorious local bully older kids were following us. So we kind of tried to gesture whisper to our other 2 friends like, come on guys, let's GFTO. It's bully guy and his bully friends. Well, our 2 friends were too cool to be scared. So me and the one friend started walking much faster, putting a large distance between us and our friends the bullies. Our friends even called out something like, haha, where are you guys going? Sure enough, the bullies suddenly ran up, beat up our 2 friends and stole their Halloween candy. I was a classic kid who followed classic kid rules. You see a gang of older bullies, you go away as fast as you can. I may not be cool, but at least I have candy.